There are changes happening in the cruise world right now that most passengers won't hear about until they're already on board, or worse, until something goes wrong. And if you've been cruising for years, you know that the difference between a great trip and a frustrating one often comes down to what you knew before you left the dock. After more than 2 decades of sailing most of the major lines, I've learned to pay close attention when things shift, and right now, a lot is shifting at once. Welcome back. If you've been cruising for years, maybe decades, you'll want to hear this. I'm going to walk you through 7 changes, updates, and new rules that are affecting cruise passengers right now, both on board and in port. Some of these will save you money. Some will save you serious aggravation. And one of them, which I'll get to in the second half, is something I think every single person sailing today needs to understand before they set foot in a foreign port. Stay with me, because that one matters more than it might seem at first. If this kind of honest, no-nonsense information is useful to you, tap the thumbs up, it genuinely helps. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's a good time. Let's get into it. We're going to start with the changes that affect your planning before you even pack a bag, then move to what's happening on board, and finally to something that's been making headlines for the wrong reasons. I'll be honest with you, not all of these changes are bad. A couple of them are actually things I think the industry should have done a long time ago. But you need to know about all of them, because whether they're good or bad depends entirely on whether you were prepared. Change number 1. Royal Caribbean is canceling an entire sailing, and the reason matters. Now, cruise cancellations happen. Ships go into dry dock, itineraries get adjusted, ports get swapped. That's part of cruising, and most of us who've sailed for a while have learned to roll with it. But this one is a little different, and it's worth talking about because of what it signals for the future. Royal Caribbean has canceled a full sailing aboard the Allure of the Seas, scheduled for March of 2027. The reason? The entire ship has been chartered by a private group. The whole thing. Every cabin, every seat, at the dinner table, gone, reserved for one organization's event. Now, ship charters have existed for a long time, but they used to happen mostly on smaller vessels, and they didn't tend to knock out trips that passengers had booked years in advance on a ship of this size. To Royal Caribbean's credit, they've made a reasonable effort to take care of the guests who had reservations. Passengers are being offered an equivalent sailing 2 weeks later at the same price they paid. If that replacement sailing happens to be priced lower, they pay the lower fare. And on top of that, there's an onboard credit included to sweeten the deal, along with some compensation for any flight change fees. That's a fair response, I'll give them that. But here's what I want you to take away from this, because it's the part that actually affects what you do on your next booking. If a charter cancels your trip, the cruise line will refund your cruise fare. What they will not cover, what no cruise line is going to cover, are your non-refundable flights, your hotel nights, your pre-cruise tours, and any other travel costs you've already locked in. And the further out you book, which many of us do to get the best pricing and cabin selection, the more exposure you have. This is exactly the situation that travel insurance with trip cancellation coverage exists for. I've said it before, and I'll keep saying it. For those of us who plan our cruises well in advance, and for those of us whose travel budgets are fixed and don't have a lot of cushion for unexpected losses, a good cancellation policy is not optional. It's part of the cost of the trip. Check what your policy covers, and make sure charter cancellations qualify as a covered reason. Some do, some don't. Read the fine print before you need it. Change number 2. Princess Cruises is updating the Medallion, and there's something you should know if you already have accessories for it. If you sail Princess regularly, you know the Medallion. It's that small disc that acts as your room key, your onboard payment method, your identity on the ship. Princess has been using it for years, and a lot of guests, especially those who sail Princess frequently, have built up a collection of accessories holders, lanyards, bracelets, sometimes quite nice pieces of jewelry designed specifically to carry the Medallion. Here's what's changing. Princess has introduced a new version of the Medallion, and the design is different enough that it may not fit older accessories the way the previous version did. Reports from recent sailings indicate there are both magnetic and plastic versions of the new Medallion in circulation, and it sounds like they may be rolling it out gradually across the fleet. Now, if you have a holder you love, whether that's a simple clip, a lanyard, or something more elegant, don't panic and don't throw anything away before you board. Here's what I've heard from passengers who've already been through this. If your holder doesn't fit the new Medallion, you can head to the accessories counter on board, and they'll provide a small insert that allows the new Medallion to sit properly in your existing holder. It's a simple fix, but it's the kind of thing that's much easier to deal with calmly if you already know it might be an issue, rather than discovering it in your cabin on the first evening. This is the kind of thing a lot of seasoned cruisers swear by. Know the small operational changes before you board. and you spend your energy enjoying the cruise instead of problem solving. Now, before I get to the next change, and the next one involves something happening in Princess's dining areas that I think is genuinely smart, and I want to get into the details on it. I want to mention something for those of you who want to go deeper than what a video can cover. We've put together the Seasoned Cruisers Complete Pack, and it covers the questions most cruisers only think of after they sail, how to position yourself before issues like charter cancellations, how to read what's actually changing fleet by fleet, and the exact steps to take the moment you board so you never waste a day or a dollar. Everything I can't fully unpack in the time we have here, laid out in one place you can refer back to every time you book. The link is in the description, and you can scan the code on your screen right now if you'd like to take a look. Now, the next change is one I think Princess deserves some real credit for, and it connects to something that's frustrated a lot of cruisers for years. Change number 3. Princess is introducing a new seating rule in the buffet. And here's why I think it's a good idea. Anyone who's spent time at a cruise ship buffet during peak hours knows the frustration. You're carrying a full plate, you've been standing in line, and you're looking across a packed dining area trying to find somewhere to sit while a group of tables is occupied by passengers playing cards or board games, with no food in front of them, no sign they're eating, just using the space because it's comfortable and convenient. Now, to be clear, there's nothing wrong with playing cards on a cruise. It's one of the genuinely enjoyable things about sea days. But the buffet during mealtimes is a shared resource, and when it's being used as a lounge, people who are actually trying to eat end up standing with their trays. What Princess appears to be doing, and I want to note that the information is coming from passenger reports on Discovery Princess, Island Princess, and Ruby Princess, rather than an official fleet-wide announcement, so your mileage may vary depending on which ship you're on, is posting signs at some tables during peak hours asking guests to please avoid using the buffet seating for card games and similar activities during busy meal. Periods. Importantly, they're not taking anything away, they're redirecting. The main dining room is being opened during those hours as an alternative, with beverages and light refreshments available, and board games provided for guests who want to use the space for exactly that kind of activity. It's a thoughtful solution. Give people somewhere to go and then ask them to use the right space for the right purpose. I've seen this come up again and again in conversations among experienced cruisers. The buffet seating issue is a real one, especially for those of us who move a little more slowly and don't want to stand longer than necessary while searching for a table. If Princess rolls this out more broadly, and if other lines follow, I think it will make mealtimes noticeably more comfortable for a lot of passengers. Change number 4. Carnival is raising the bar in its main dining room, and the results are worth knowing about. When people talk about Carnival, the conversation often centers on the party atmosphere, the entertainment, the ship size. The dining room doesn't always get the attention it deserves. But Carnival has been making some genuine improvements to its included dining, and the updates go beyond just swapping out a few menu items. What's changing is both the food itself and the presentation. There's a noticeable upgrade in how dishes are being plated and served, which matters more than people sometimes give it credit for. Presentation affects how food tastes. That's not a snobby observation, it's just how the dining experience works. When a mushroom soup arrives with a flaky, buttery pastry crust on top, rather than just ladled into a bowl, that's a different experience. Barbecue salmon done well, a proper butter chicken, these are dishes that belong in a good dining room, and Carnival appears to be committing to executing them properly. For breakfast, Carnival is adding something called bagels at sea to the main dining room menu. Several varieties of bagels with different toppings and fillings, including a classic smoked salmon and cream cheese option as a proper sit-down breakfast choice. For those of us who prefer a quieter, more relaxed start to the day rather than navigating the buffet first thing in the morning, this is exactly the kind of option that makes a difference. And on the newest Carnival ships, specifically Carnival Celebration and Carnival Tropicale, there will be 4 new restaurant concepts: a coastal seafood specialty restaurant, a French bistro, and 2 hybrid restaurants with included first visits. After the first visit, if you want to return, it's around $8 per person. That's a reasonable model, and it's worth knowing about if you have a booking on either of those ships. Change number 5. Onboard fights are happening more often, and the consequences in foreign ports are more serious than most people realize. I want to handle this one carefully, because it's not a pleasant topic, but it's one that genuinely affects how we experience cruising, and I think the full picture isn't being discussed. We've seen a pattern developing over the past year or so. Altercations involving groups of passengers, not 1 or 2 people, but groups of 10, 12, 16 people, happening with enough frequency that it's showing up in the news almost monthly. The most recent incident involved passengers on Carnival Conquest disembarking in Miami. An earlier incident took place at Royal Caribbean's Nassau Beach Club, involving a dozen or more guests. Another incident, and in this case the cruise line wasn't publicly identified, ended with passengers being taken to a police station in Nassau and then getting into a confrontation with police officers there. The result was arrests and fines totaling close to $50,000. Now, Carnival has stated publicly that they have zero tolerance for this kind of behavior and that the individuals involved have been banned from sailing. And I'll be honest, I think that's the right call. But there's a broader conversation worth having here. On a domestic flight, airlines share information about disruptive passengers. There are systems in place. The question I keep coming back to is whether the cruise industry should have something similar, a shared registry, across lines, that follows individuals who have demonstrated they're a danger to other passengers. Right now, being banned from one line doesn't necessarily prevent you from booking with another. And for those of us who choose cruising specifically because of the environment, the sense of safety, the ability to enjoy a trip without worrying about what's happening around us, that gap in the system is worth thinking about. Stay with me, because the next item is something I'd call the most practically important change in this video, and it connects directly to the safety question I just raised, but in a way most passengers haven't considered. Change number 6, the legal reality of incidents in foreign ports, and why this matters more than the headlines suggest. Here's the honest truth that I think gets lost in the drama of these stories. When an incident happens on a cruise ship in US waters, or as passengers are disembarking in a US port, the legal consequences are serious enough. But when something happens in a foreign port, Nassau, Cozumel, Dubrovnik, anywhere outside your home country, you are operating under that country's laws, not US law. Not your country's law. The local law, applied by local authorities, with local consequences. That means if you're involved in an incident in a foreign port, even if you consider yourself an innocent bystander who got pulled in, you could be detained, arrested, and fined under a legal system you don't fully understand, with a timeline that has nothing to do with when your ship is scheduled to leave. And the ship will leave. That's not a threat, it's a reality of how cruise itineraries work. If you're in a foreign port and you miss the ship because you're dealing with local authorities, the cruise line's obligation to you is limited. This is a piece of advice I offer without hesitation. Be aware of your surroundings in port, especially in busy disembarkation areas and crowded port facilities. If you see a situation escalating, move away from it. You don't have to get involved, you don't have to record it, and you certainly don't want to be anywhere near it when local authorities arrive. For those of us who cruise to relax and explore, the best thing we can do is give these situations a wide berth, literally. This is the kind of thing a lot of seasoned cruisers learn through experience, sometimes the hard way. I've seen it affect people who had nothing to do with the original incident. Just keep that in mind. Change number 7. The Princess Medallion technology update is also changing how check-in and boarding work, and if you're sailing Princess soon, it's worth knowing what to expect. This is connected to what I mentioned earlier about the new Medallion design, but it goes further. Princess is rolling out an updated online check-in and reservation process that's still evolving as of recent sailings. If you've sailed Princess before, you already know the Medallion system is the foundation of how almost everything works on board: your room access, your drink orders, your onboard charges, your location for the Medallion class app features. When that system gets updated, it touches the entire experience. The practical advice here is straightforward. If you have an upcoming Princess sailing, check the app and the website regularly in the weeks before you board, not just once when you first book. Things may look different than they did the last time you sailed. The check-in flow may have changed. What you need to complete before boarding may have shifted. Princess is a line that tends to communicate these changes through the app rather than through direct guest communication, so staying active on the platform is the best way to stay ahead of any changes before they catch you off guard at the pier. And if you do run into confusion on board with the new Medallion setup, the accessories desk and the guest services team are there for exactly this reason. Don't let a small tech wrinkle take time away from enjoying the cruise. Ask early, get it sorted, and move on. Now, one thing I want to say before we close this out, and this applies to all 7 of these changes, not just the last one, the cruise lines are not your enemy here. The industry is going through a lot of change right now, and some of it is genuinely positive, some of it is neutral, and some of it requires you to be a more informed passenger than you might have needed to be 5 or 10 years ago. The cruisers who are going to have the best experiences in this environment are the ones who pay attention, ask questions, and don't assume that what was true on their last sailing is still true on the next one. For those of us who've been doing this long enough to remember when the information was harder to come by, that habit of staying informed is already second nature. Keep it. Now I want to hear from you. Of all the changes in this video, which one surprised you most? And on the question of a shared no-sail registry across cruise lines, is that something you think the industry should seriously consider? Drop your honest take in the comments below. I read every single one, and these conversations matter. Next time, I'm covering the cabin categories most cruisers over 60 should think twice about booking. Some of the answers will genuinely surprise you, so subscribe if you don't want to miss that one. And if this video was useful, a thumbs up goes a long way. Thank you for spending part of your day here. Smooth seas, and I'll see you next time.